Happy Tuesday, everyone joining live to this Ask Nancy live stream. We do this every couple of weeks. And welcome to anyone who is watching the replay. I post these on my YouTube channel. Please feel free to subscribe to that channel so you can see them as they get dropped. And also, if there's anyone you know who might benefit from these sessions where we talk about communication challenges, workplace challenges, please, I encourage you to share the information with them. So I'm Nancy Berger, happy to be here and happy to share that we got a couple of great questions this past week, and I'm just excited to dive right in. So let's get started. So the first question I got was, we have a team admin who refuses to take on tasks they don't feel like doing, and that it depends on who asks them whether or not they complete these tasks. How do we navigate that? That's the question. And this is a good one because there's many components to the answer. The first thing I want to say, though, is if anybody thinks that the best way to navigate this challenge is to pound your fist on the desk of the admin and demand that the tasks get done, that you've had it, you're at the end of your rope, things have to change, I will quote a much admired author who aptly answered this question in the title of his book. Right. That's not the way you want to handle that. So how do you handle it? The first thing I would say is get curious. Ask some questions. Ask this admin some questions to try to uncover what might be getting in the way. Gather information. Why are they not doing the tasks? When you ask, thoughtful questions, probing questions to try to get information about this, you're doing two things. Number one, you may learn something that is causing a disruption in that flow. Maybe the admin doesn't know how to do all the tasks, but feels, uncomfortable asking, or, has some insecurity about asking. Or maybe there's something else going on that you just don't know about, and it's not just obstinance or blatant pushback. So getting curious and asking some questions is a great way to start. The other thing that it does is it messages to the admin that you're noticing, right? So I'm assuming that whoever asked the question works fairly closely with this admin to notice that these tasks are not getting done. So by getting curious and asking some probing questions, you're sending a message that you're noticing the tasks aren't getting done, and you're also trying to find out why. Powerful, and can lead to some great connection and resolution. The second thing I would suggest is, and I say this a lot, we co-create every single relationship we're in, personal, professional, every which way. So the second thing I would suggest is to reflect a little bit and try to understand how you are co-creating this dynamic with this admin. This is not a fault thing or a blame thing. This is really tapping into, your humility and say, okay, how does this go every day? What is the flow of information between us? What is the dynamic between us? And how might I be contributing or, creating a collaboration in which all the tasks are not getting done, or maybe the admin feels that they don't need to, want to do them. Okay, so first, getting curious. Second, how are you participating in creating this dynamic? And a very powerful phrase to use when broaching subjects like this with colleagues is, help me understand, right? Help me understand why XYZ is not getting done. How can I help? And that's not to say that you have to take on the fixing of it, but how can I help me understand, and how can I help is a much more positive way to broach a subject like this than why are you not doing it, right? Or third thought, maybe the admin has something going on personally. Maybe there's just a problem that no one knows about, or you can ask another question like, is there something going on? Is there a struggle that maybe we can help with, so that we pave the way for these things to get done? Now, number 4, and it's number 4 for a reason. It's not number 1. You can talk to your manager. If tasks are not getting done that need to get done to facilitate workflow, and there's, blatant pushback, or an admin just doesn't do them because they don't feel like doing them. Sometimes they do them, sometimes they don't. It's becoming frustrating. It's disrupting work. It's causing deadlines to be missed. You can, of course, talk to your manager, but you have to be very careful here. This is not a complaint session, or certainly not naming the admin, but starting with getting some clarity around roles and responsibilities. You may start the conversation with your manager by saying, I just want to understand, we're having some disruption in flow. We've missed a couple of deadlines for clients, and I've been able to kind of determine where the points of failure are. And I want to make sure that it doesn't fall under my responsibility. You see that it's nuanced, but you're talking about, you're getting clarity on who's responsible for what, how, so that you can, get the work done and facilitate. It's always about solving the problem and getting the work done. It's not about, arranging a meeting with your manager so you can complain about a colleague. That's just not a good look anytime. So talk to them, say, this is the issue we're dealing with. This is how I see that maybe we can solve the problem, but I want to make sure, right? Then it may be between the lines, the manager may say, okay, I'm putting things together as to why there's a challenge here. I think those are 4 of the best, sort of treetop solutions for this kind of a problem. So let me just quickly recap. Asking questions. Why are the tasks not getting done? Reflecting on how you may be co-creating the dynamic with that admin. Using your compassion, right? And compassion doesn't mean everything's okay and you forgive it and you're great with it. Compassion means tapping into thoughts about what the struggle might be, right? And maybe offering to help for a limited time, not indefinitely, but for a limited time. 4th, talk to your boss carefully, okay? You always want to approach these things with a spirit of collaboration, with compassion and humility, right? Important piece, and focused on problem solving. You don't want to complain about someone to your boss, and you don't want to enable the behavior by always doing the task yourself because the admin refuses to do it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to the next question, which was a good one too. And it is, how do I communicate professionally to set boundaries in the workplace? So how do I set boundaries professionally? Now, I just want to take a minute to talk about boundaries. And when we were going through the pandemic, physical boundaries, came into focus in a big way, right? Suddenly we were all empowered to express our comfort with physical boundaries. Are you comfortable if I'm in the elevator with you? Or would you like me to wait for the next one? Where we wear a mask, where we don't, what events we go to, what events we don't go to. When we are at events or in the workplace, are you comfortable shaking hands? Would you like to elbow bump? We were suddenly thrust into this this world where physical boundaries were discussed openly, which really we, hadn't done before. I mean, sure, somebody might say, may I give you a hug, or, may I sit next to you, but not in the way that we experienced during that health crisis. So, but physical boundaries are one kind of boundary. And that allows us to kind of launch into a discussion about the other ones. And that's why I brought it up. So emotional boundaries are kind of, our preferences in the workplace for how feedback is shared, how we delegate, how we participate in dynamics with others. In other words, emotional boundaries, an emotional boundary would be, I'm not going to take on the bad mood of my colleague or my manager today, or ever. Setting those boundaries is, to care for your own emotional well-being. And then there are mental boundaries. And mental boundaries would include things that are impacted by your thoughts, opinions, values. Okay, so for instance, what hours of the day are you going to work? In these hybrid work environments that we're in now, lines have gotten blurred, right? So when am I working? When am I not working? What is the efficiency of our weekly team meetings, for example? How could they become more efficient? You might want to make suggestions about that. That's creating mental boundaries. Not gossiping, right? That's setting a clear mental boundary. If one of your teammates, texts you at night, or your manager texts you at night, setting a mental boundary would be saying, look, when I'm with my family, I don't look at text, so I will answer you in the next workday, things like that. So I just wanted to give a little context by discussing the different types of boundaries, because I think it's important to understand, what boundary you're talking about when you're thinking of setting them. So how do you do it? How do you do it professionally? I think one of the most important things to consider is why you're setting the boundary, and then prioritizing sort of the tasks within that realm. So let's take the example of time with my kids. That's a personal priority. And if that's paramount, then that signals to you that, you may want to say, okay, starting at 6:00, I'm going to be offline. I'm going to be plugged in with my family, and I'm not going to. So prioritize what's important to you personally and professionally, and then use those priorities as a way to, also prioritize your boundaries. Okay. So family time, or if you have professional tasks, a long list of tasks that you have to do, which ones align most with your values? And then use that information to set boundaries. The second way to communicate boundaries professionally is through delegation, right? You want to consider what you need to do and what can be delegated. Especially if you're a manager, are you sort of micromanaging, or are you giving some thought to what your team members can do and how that might empower them? Right. So we're talking about setting a boundary, but it's not always that you're saying no to something. Sometimes it's that you're saying yes to something, that you're passing the baton on a task that may need to get done, but doesn't need to get done by you. And in creating a boundary around yourself, like, okay, there's a guardrail here. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to let other people do it. It can build connective tissue and great collaborative, dynamics among a team. Third thing, tip on creating boundaries professionally Get clarity on your workload. Get clarity on your roles and responsibilities, because that can help you have a clearer picture of where a boundary can be set. In other words, if you're accepting texts at night and you're afraid to say I or emails, and you feel like you have to answer them because you have so many things to do and so many projects under your belt and you're just trying to figure it all out. If you spend some time with your manager to get clear on what the priorities are, help me prioritize this, is a great response to a manager that's giving you yet another thing on your task list. They may be just telling you to get it off their mind so they don't forget, but that might not mean that it has to be done right away. Saying to your manager, help me prioritize this, says a couple of things, right? In between the lines. I have a lot going on. I want to know where this falls on that continuum, so that I can, be as effective as possible. The fourth way to professionally set boundaries is to honor your time off, honor your need to unplug. And, saying I can't do this right now is uncomfortable for a lot of people in the workplace. I have too much on my plate. I'm stressed out. I can't do this right now. But understand that time off and breaks are critically important to the overall success, overall outcomes in the workplace. So in other words, if we don't set boundaries and we don't honor our need to take time off, the organization will ultimately suffer, because it's not sustainable to work all the time and to, have 65 plates in the air at work. It's not sustainable, and it's not productive. So when you can approach it that way, whether it be in your feedback sessions with your manager or in talking with your teammates or in trying to get projects done, keep in mind that time off and rest and rejuvenation is a critical component of a successful workplace dynamic, of getting everything done, of, meeting goals. So it's okay to talk about that. I think there's still a little stigma around it. It's much more, it's in the news a lot more. It's in articles now. It's in the media a lot more, how important it is. But I think that on an individual level, sometimes we have trouble raising our hand and saying, look, I need to take a break here, or I need to leave a little early today because it's been a tough day and I'm struggling with some things. I mean, it's not something you do all the time, and it's not something you want to make a habit of. You want to preserve these things for times when you really need it, of course. But even throughout the day, when it's lunchtime, if you need a break and you want to take a walk, you want to move around, you want to eat something, it's okay to say, I need to do this for myself, because again, it will help the overall dynamic in the workplace. Okay. Another tip for setting boundaries professionally is communicating effectively and with confidence. If you haven't downloaded my 5-step guide to having difficult conversations, you might get a lot out of it. It's free. You can go on my website, nancyRberger.com, scroll down a little bit, and you will see the pop-up to download this guide. It's 15 pages. There's a lot of information there. The basics of how to have difficult conversations comes down to understanding what's scaring you about it, first of all, because once you understand that, you can kind of reframe your thoughts around it. Understanding what narratives you're creating, if you're making stories that are based on fiction instead of fact, how to actually start these difficult conversations. I give tips about, what kind of statements you want to make, how you want to make I statements, not you statements, and the difference and why it's impactful to do it that way. Hesitating, resisting the urge to apologize. When you are expressing yourself or you have a difference of opinion, it's nothing to apologize for. And then the importance of holding space for another person to express themselves after you do. So that can be a really helpful guide, 5-step guide to having difficult conversations. You can download it on my site. And another tip on this is on setting boundaries professionally is asking for advice. Talking to trusted people outside your team, your organization, people that can help guide you, that know you, and that, are, as I said, trustworthy, because that can give you some perspective that you might not have. Sometimes we get too close to these situations and we really can't see our way through them. So ask for advice, talk to other people. I think that's enough for today, right? We could talk about this a lot longer, but setting boundaries really comes down to, I believe, and in my work, I notice this a lot with clients. First, understanding what's making you so uncomfortable and why you need the boundary in the first place. That's the best place to start. Once we start unpacking that, then it kind of, the conversation unfolds on its own organically, because it's like, oh, I'm stressed out because at 11 o'clock at night, I have to answer emails. Well, do you have to answer emails at 11 o'clock at night? Or are you assuming that you have to? What is making you so uncomfortable? Why are you feeling compelled to do this? And let's talk about ways that you can do it differently. So I hope all of this information is helpful to you. If you're joining live today, and you want to take notes on what we talked about, you can go to the replay. It'll be up on my YouTube channel shortly. And if you have any questions you would like me to address in these sessions, please send them. You can go to you can look down in the show notes, or you could go to my website and just email me, or just shoot me an email at explore@nancyrberger.com, and I will put in the subject line Ask Nancy, and I will include those and answer them if I can in the next session. Until then, be well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.